Well, I'm gonna go ahead and get started now because I know you guys have other things to do, and some other people have signed up for this, but they're not here yet. So, but we'll go ahead and get started anyway. There was a fancy flat screen TV up here, and I was the one that requested it, and the idea was that we didn't have to have a special projector up here or anything, and the projector doesn't work that well in this room anyway because of the lights. I thought flat screen would be good, right? So I come up here, they tell me it's all done, it's ready to go, blah, blah. Get up here, and there's nothing to plug into. So I have these great slides to show you, and I can't show them to you. What I'm doing is I'm actually recording the workshop as we go along, and I can make the slides and the recording available to you as we go, if you want me to do that. And some of the slides may have some information that you find helpful. I'm Brian Harrison, Director of Career Services. Some of you know me already. And let's see, how many of you are seniors? Okay, juniors, sophomores. Okay, we have some first years. Okay, well, fantastic. That's great. I'm glad you're here because you can begin to start thinking about some of these things. And my goals for tonight are to kind of move us all forward in how we're thinking about what it is that we want to do when we graduate, and to have more information to make those kinds of decisions. I'm doing this under this framework of some popular articles that seem to take place several times a year. And Fortune magazine has one. It's 100 best places to work. And there are several other versions of that come out pretty much yearly. So that's what suggested this. I'll talk a little bit about some of the characteristics and what they say makes a best company. But one thing I want to challenge you on is that a best company is the one that's best for you. And while I love for Trinity graduates and Trinity itself to be associated with organizations that everybody knows about and are household names, I also know that there are a lot of really amazing organizations out there that we don't know the names of or aren't commonly known that can be some just amazing places to start a career. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about starting a career. We're talking about what I call first destinations. That is the place that you will be at immediately after graduation, but likely not the place that you're going to be for your entire career, which for most of us is going to be 40 or more years. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to give each one of you a note card. And on the note card, I would like you to record one or two companies or organizations. They don't have to be companies. They could be nonprofits. They could be government agencies. One or two that you would really like to know more about, or that you would like to see recruit Trinity students. And I want you to be specific about that. Don't say a government agency, and don't say a nonprofit, and don't say a green company. Give me a specific name of an organization if you can think of one. Okay? Okay. So does anybody want to share? Anybody want to share company, or how are you going to get from here to there?
Yeah, Pfizer is one of my companies.
Okay. Okay.
My uncle is a sales rep for Pfizer.
Awesome.
But he doesn't really doesn't deal along with the sector that I would like to work
Yeah.
with Pfizer. I'm a chemistry major, so
Right.
I want to get some R&D
Okay.
So I'm trying to
All right.
get my foot in the door through that.
Okay. Great.
But I have nothing.
Okay.
DBT Laboratories.
Okay.
They make a lot of medications. If you look on some of your medications, I think there's an acne medication called Different that is made by DBT Laboratories,
Yeah.
who has a plant down 281.
Yep.
It's actually the one so.
Yeah, fantastic. And just to let you know, I mean, we have some contacts with some. I don't know if I have a contact with Pfizer. We may, but we do have some contact with some biotech companies, and including you. So, anybody else want to share? No. All right. Yeah.
I don't necessarily, I haven't like taken any steps, I don't know
Right.
like what I have to do to get there, but I want to work for like airlines or like ship companies, like
Okay.
I want to travel a lot.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
Mhm.
And again, we have some contacts with there. We also have some contacts with, for instance, one of the vice presidents of what used to be an international vice president with Marriott. Now he's with another company. But, I mean, he's an alumnus. He's been immensely helpful, and so these are some of the kinds of things that there's method to my madness here in making you do this. First of all, it's to get you thinking about it. Secondly of all, I'm going to want those cards because if you suggested a company that we don't have contacts with, I want to try to go get some contacts and begin developing a relationship with them. And the other piece is that you have to think about how you're going to get from here to there. And that is often the biggest challenge for upcoming graduates, especially, is having an idea of what they want to do, but not really knowing how to get from. Talk a little bit about that. I'm gonna spend a couple of minutes talking about what defines the best company, what defines the best place to launch a career. It's a little bit different. Do best companies recruit Trinity students? I had a whole list to show you. Some strategies. And we'll talk about having you tell your story and developing your plan, as I said. But we begin with the end in mind, which is what I was asking for, which is where do you want to work, or where is an aspirational place for you to work, and begin to think about how you can. All right. In Fortune's 100 best companies, it's a two-part process that they go through, and part of it is an evaluation by people who work in the organization. So they're looking at management, the credibility of management, and the job satisfaction and camaraderie. And then there's a whole list of other things that the companies, there's 300, almost 400 companies that they survey in this. So here's part of the thing, right? From an information literacy standpoint, right? Y'all are familiar with information literacy, right? Some faculty members are talking with you about that kind of stuff, right? Figuring out what's credible information. So that's not an exhaustive number to survey, is it? If you look at the numbers of actual companies there's more than 300 and 400 companies in San Antonio, much less, There's more than 300 or 400 companies on the Fortune 500. It's the Fortune 500 after all, right? So it's not an exhaustive list, but it does give you some sense. The other things that they look at, and they survey the companies themselves, and they're looking for, okay, what's the diversity of your organization? What's the pay, and what are the perks or benefits? What's their people management philosophy? Internal communication. What are the opportunities with the organization, and I think probably they're also looking at where are the career paths for people who come in at an entry-level job? What's advancement like? So those are some of the kinds of things that they look at. And I would translate that for us by saying that those are also some good things, if you don't know what to research a company on, those are some good things to look at, right? And, the first three, those subjective things, are more difficult to get at because you almost have to go and talk to somebody that works for the company, right? And we'll talk a little bit about that. If I forget, don't let me forget. But I think that those are, how credible is management? There are some tools out there where you can get some of that information, but it's kind of like, did any of y'all know about RateMyProfessor.com? Okay, so all right, so it's kind of like RateMyProfessor.com. Who goes to RateMyProfessor.com? Is it mainly to complain?
There's.
Just to know more.
Oh, so you're just using it to pick classes, right? Okay, because they've got some data on that, and it's like the people that go there most often to report are ones that actually have a bone to pick with the professor. And it's like, if you have a good experience with in a retail thing, you might tell one or two people. If you have a bad experience, you tell 10. That's a principle of marketing, right? So it's a similar kind of thing. But it's one piece of information, though. So there are some resources out there that best places to launch a career. One of the things they did was they went out and they surveyed people like me, and they said, okay, who's coming to campus to recruit your students, and what are, who's generating buzz on your campus, but also who's, what are you hearing good about something? Because we get feedback from students or recent graduates, and they'll say, this place is good, or we'll notice that we have people that go to work for an organization and we turn around and 6 months later they're not there. So it makes you wonder if their retention rate is not past 6 months, whether or not, is this a good place to launch a career? Pay, benefits, typical stuff, retention, as I mentioned, and then Business Week does this survey, and they the last survey that they did, which was a 2009 one, there were 37,000 undergraduates that they surveyed, and they were asking them, things like, where would you like to work, and that kind of thing. Any questions about that? Again, I go through this more because I think it informs us in terms of, okay, what are some of the kinds of things that are good to know, in addition to where you find that information. Went through and said, okay, so on this list of 100, how many of these do we have contacts with at Trinity? If they're not out and out posting jobs with us, do we have a contact with them? And I think there were 20, so a fifth of them. There's a lot of companies on that list that most of us haven't actually heard of. So that was part of it. But Google, Edward Jones, Scottrade, USAA, New Star Energy, which is based in San Antonio, Chesapeake Energy, all four of the big four accounting firms. FactSet Research Systems will be here later on in the semester to recruit. Teach for America, Booz Allen Hamilton. And then on the other side, on the best places to launch a career, Aerotech and Tech Systems. Tech Systems was at the career fair, and they did some interview. Northwestern Mutual Financial Network was at the career fair. U.S. Department of State did an info session for us earlier in the semester. Nestle Purina they have really kicked up their recruitment, and they're listed as one of the best places to launch a career. They're based in St. Louis. Facebook, we have 2 alumni that are working in the Austin office. Whataburger is listed as one of the best places to launch a career. Don't think about the end product. Think about what it takes to get the product there. J.P. Morgan Chase. So those are some examples of companies. All right. So I've given you some hints already about, and here's the thing. First of all, I think that it's important for you to define for yourself what that means. And I won't, and you have to think along the lines of what are your interests? If you don't know what your interests are, you can't communicate them, then you might want to make an appointment to come see us, because we may want to do some testing with you. It would depend on you as an individual and how much we can draw out of you in an initial meeting. But a second thing is work values. And here's how I ask the work values question. And I think this is fairly easy for most of us to think about. If you were going to think about a place that you had to go to work every day, what would be really important? What would be some of the important characteristics of a workplace? Okay, and they're going to differ a lot for different people. But sometimes I just ask it, like list the top 3, right? So, what would be really important for you
In a workplace?
Yeah.
Location, I guess.
Location. You mean geographical location? Okay. All right. Good. Be more specific.
Preferably in an urban area.
Urban area. Okay. Can you be more specific? Does it matter if it's north, south, east, or west?
Northeast would be preferable.
Okay.
Or Texas.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's fine. What about you? What would be really important?
Problem management.
Management. You got to be more specific than that. What does that mean?
You have good managers ability to guide you and help you with whatever you're working on and help you work up.
Okay, so an environment where you get constructive feedback, okay? That's definitely a work value, and not all places are like that, right? What else? Okay. All right. Okay. Well, you touched on a bunch of things, really, that kind of, it all started with the communication with other people, right? So you want interaction with coworkers, right? And managers, right? It's important for you to be in a place where you're not doing the same thing all the time, right? You don't want to be chained to a desk, right? Or chained to a computer. And those are all what I consider to be work values. These are things that are important. So as you're researching, the kind of place that you'd like to work, the kind of company or organization that you'd like to work for. Now, if you're going to be an accountant, not to stereotype accountants, but I mean, they pretty much spend a good part of their day is on a computer, working spreadsheets and working in financial or accounting information systems. They do spend a lot more time than most people think having customer interaction or client interaction. You're dealing with people's money. It's their money. And they call you all the time to ask you things and ask you questions. So they spend a lot of time on the phone. They do spend a lot of time meeting with clients as well. So it's not nearly as sort of stereotypically on the computer all day as one might think, but it's not, it probably wouldn't be the best fit for you, right? Okay? So those are some of the kinds of things to think about. And then finally, it's what are you good at? The example that I use all the time with Trinity students is close to 100% of Trinity students have good analytical skills. How do I know that? Because you couldn't have done well enough on your ACT or SAT scores to get admitted here if you weren't good at math, right? Now, just because most of you are good at it doesn't mean that you would enjoy it all the time, right? So It's a skill. Is it a skill that I want to use? And being analytical, having an analytical skill, I think is a little bit different than actual math skills. That you can test out the waters of how good you are with analytical skills by what? What classes could you take to check that out? Calculus? You know, I'm not sure that calculus is all that highly analytical. It's very much about formulas and kind of learning that. So it's not as applied. Statistics might be an example of that, yeah. You know, if you get it, or if you're able to get it, and that's something that you enjoy doing, then yeah, I think so. Lots of chemistry classes we're going to have, especially when you get into, you know, quant and all those kinds of things. I mean, you're talking about some things where you really are looking at, you know, being able to analyze data to figure out what stuff is. Remind me to tell you the story about my unknown one time. I won't get into that now. So those are some of the kinds of things for you to think about. This is all self, you know, information. Gathering information about yourself and then gathering information about an organization. All right? You definitely want to begin to network. That is, like, to me, networking is the most important skill you can develop, the most important strategy you can develop. And there's several reasons for that. And by the way, you don't want to put the cart before the horse. You have to have that information first, especially your personal information. It's really helpful for you to be able to talk to a networking resource, another person. They're going to ask you, what do you want to do? And so to be able to give them some, you know, brief, concise response to that is very helpful. It's hard for somebody to help you if you can't tell them what you need help with, right? And so that's one of the important things in networking is, and particularly when we're working with alumni, you know, the message about who we are and what it is, what our goals are, is important. So that's why I always talk about this sort of self-analysis first, and then we start talking about the networking piece. And that is beginning to find out who might have information about things I'm interested in, work I'm interested in, occupations I'm interested in, graduate schools I'm interested in. Who might have some information that they would be willing to share? Networking is not asking for a job, by the way. Completely different thing. If you tell, and the example I like to use is, if you had a senior in high school call you, and they were applying to Trinity, and they would say, "Can you get me in?" You know, what would happen? That's pretty much out of your hands, right? And the same thing goes for 99% of your networking resources. If you call them and say, "Can you get me a job?" they're not going to be able to answer the question. Now, if the same senior calls you and says, "Man, I really want to go to Trinity, and I know that you're a student there. Can you tell me what you did? Can you talk about what you put on your application? You know, what did you say in your interactions with, you know, what do I need to know about the school? Can you help them with that?" Yeah, and the vast majority of Trinity students would be actually thrilled to do that, because most of you really like it here, and you like other people to like it here, right? And the alumni and most networking resources actually feel the same way. Yeah, and by the way, most of them are actually flattered to be asked. And one of the issues I think for a lot of students is sort of that fear of going. You know, they wouldn't want to talk to me. I'm just a first year. You know, I'm a senior, and you know they don't want to talk to me. But that it's just the opposite. It's true, but you just don't. You just want to have you know, your ducks in a row. You want to have your communications plan there so that you're not wasting their time and they have a clear understanding. and that you're not taking up too much of their time. One of the things that's going to happen during the winter break, and you're going to see some information about this coming out very shortly. It'll be on Tiger Jobs and among other places. And later on in November, it'll start showing up in Leroy. But we have a series of networking programs called Making Connections. We'll have one in Houston, which, sorry guys, is going to be just for seniors. Because seniors and maybe juniors. And the reason is because the location that we have it we've got limited space there. But the rest of them are open to anybody. And so there'll be one in Austin, one in Dallas, one in Fort Worth. And then there'll be several. There's going to be one in Denver. I think there's one in the National Capital area, one in D.C., several other places. St. Louis, I think, might be having one. New York is going to have them Making Connections, but they're going to do theirs during spring break. So they're testing the waters. This is an experiment. Can we get students to come to New York over spring break and pick that over Florida or, Padre?
I know there's some international students.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's it's going to be an interesting experiment. I'm interested to see. But those are wonderful programs. But if you can't get to them Making Connections, you can still connect to alumni because we've got any number of resources. You go to the Career Services website, and the easiest thing to do is type in the old Trinity address, which is trinity.edu/career, and then you go to the student page. And if you scroll down, there's a section at the bottom that's about networking. One of it is alumni connections. Click on that link, and it'll bring up 4 or 5 different resources, including Making Connections, for you to be able to access that. So some of the other things. Tell me what some of the other things you think that you can do from a strategic standpoint to get from here to there, to get to a best company. Yeah.
You could probably seek out experience that can supplement.
Fantastic. Absolutely. I think experience is fantastic. And experience can come in a number of different ways. It doesn't always have to come in the form of an internship. Internships are great, but you could get it through volunteer work. You could get it through doing undergraduate research. Any way, it's interesting because sometimes I'll talk to students and they'll do anything they can think of to just get more experience. And it looks really good on your resume, but it also gives you something to hang your hat on. Okay? What else? It's not unimportant, but I will. And when we're talking about Fortune 100 companies, okay, and we're talking about companies in certain, very specific sectors. An example would be some of the major consulting firms. A McKinsey, a Boston Consulting Group that's like number 2 on the list, right? In some IT areas, but not all, and for the accounting firms, okay? GPA, there's GPA cutoffs. They do some of the big Wall Street banks, GPA cutoffs, okay? They do that because they can. But the truth of the matter is that you are not your GPA, and what they really want is results. So to the extent that you can show them experience and results, and you can communicate your story to them about what your capabilities are, that's actually, that ends up being much more important in most cases than GPA. Okay? It's not unimportant. They might ask you, if they ask for a lot of companies, almost every company will ask you for an official transcript at some point. If they ask it during the interview process, a lot of times they don't ask it until after they've hired you. And then it's just to verify you haven't lied on your resume, right? But if they ask you for it during the application process, one of the things that you might get a question, it's possible they might say, what happened to you in organic chemistry? That was the question they asked me.
Is that your own story?
No, that comes from qualitative analysis. Yeah. Ran it 16 times. Never did get it right. Professor got so tired of seeing me, he gave me a D. Could not titrate to save my life. You know what I'm talking about, right? The rest of you, if you haven't taken chemistry, then it won't make a lot of sense. Pay attention to what's going on out there. I mean, I can't tell you how many students miss opportunities because they're not in Tiger jobs. You know, most people don't realize that you can actually create a job agent on Tiger Jobs. You can give it certain parameters, and every time a job comes into the thing, it'll email you and say, there was a new job posted that you might be interested in. But it's not 100% perfect. It's not nearly as good as Siri on the new iPhone, but it's helpful, and it helps cut through some of the noise. But there's just a lot of opportunities out there, and people miss them. And the other thing is, be aware of deadlines. Every year we're going to have a percentage of students who start the process, the application process, really late. We have students that miss deadlines for application to selective admissions graduate schools because they start too late. They don't take their GMAT or GRE early enough. I mean, there's all sorts of things that happen. And then they end up doing a gap year, so, which is not the worst thing in the world, but it's helpful for you to pay attention to what those kinds of things are. Some of these big name companies, they're done recruiting for the year for entry-level people and for internships, believe it or not. Especially the big consulting firms are done. A lot of the Wall Street banks are done. Some of the big major engineering companies are done now. So if you're in any of those fields or you want to get into any of those fields, you need to be aware that there are deadlines for application. And we're working to try to get more of that information in the Tiger Jobs, but it's very labor intensive. We have to go out there and dig for it or find a contact that's willing to share that information with us and let us know. So we're doing a lot better than we were 3 or 4 years ago, but we still have a ways to go. So if you know specific organizations, and by the way, another strategy, go to their website. Go to their website, do an application on their website. It's much more effective to put a resume or an application in on the company's website than it is to go through a job aggregator. You know what I mean when I'm talking about a job aggregator? Simply Hired, Indeed, some of these things. And by the way, those are really nice tools for research because you get a lot of information real quick. But they're not real good. And my definition of success is, do you get an interview? What's the percentage of time do you go from the application to an interview? And on the big job boards, it's like less than 10%. It's higher if you go through the website. But again, 60% of all of the hires out there, and this is why I harp on the networking piece, come either because you know somebody or you got to know somebody. 40% of hires, typically, nationally, come from internal referrals. In other words, I call Bob in human resources and I say, Bob, got this young man. What's your name? Tommy. You need to talk to this guy for this nuclear scientist job. It would be awesome. And so he might not even know me, but he's going to trust me because we work for the same organization. And I'm putting my professional reputation on the line for you. I'm probably not going to call him unless I'm fairly sure you'd be a good hire. Don't give up in the process, and have a good reason to want to work for these organizations. Shouldn't just be because best company, should not be because it's a prestigious company. So what if it's a prestigious company? If you're miserable because you have to work 100 hours a week, some of you want to work 100 hours a week coming right out of school. You don't, or some of your cohort, they're okay with that. Okay? And that's great. But be aware that there are places like that out there. All right. Tell your story, but remember that I just got finished. How many of you know Dr. Hansen, Andrew Hansen? Okay, he's over and he teaches in human performance and what is the name of it? It used to be speech communication, IQ. Human communication and performance. I think that's what it is, right? Theater, yeah. Okay. So anyway, one of these days I'll get the semantics of that down. But anyway, so he was just talking about communication skills, and one of the things that he was saying that is important, and I've completely lost my train of thought. Oh well, I didn't learn as much as I thought I did. It'll come back to me. Anyway, oh yeah. When you speak, you're speaking to an audience. Okay? When you're telling your story, and especially when you get into the application process, this is especially true for upper class students, right? When you get into the application process, it's about them. It's about the organization and what they need you to do for them, and how well you're able to communicate that to them. It's not about you in the sense that they need you to do something for them. Does that make sense? Why is your educational background important to them? What's your major? Computer science. Why should they hire you, not an MIT graduate?
It's a specialized supervisor.
Okay. How so?
Being able to code.
Okay. Okay. But you need to understand what it is when you say that, and you say it's specific. You need to be able to tell them specifically why. Now, and I'll give you one other thing. And this is one of the things that I think is why Trinity is a hidden gem in technical and science majors. You guys have to take a liberal arts core on top of your science. Very few. In fact, your MIT cohort, they don't have to do that. Now, it makes them really good programmers, but it often does not make them really good interactions with clients. So it's great, I can hire you and you can code, but can I put you in front of a client? And that's what you get at Trinity that a lot of these programs don't give you. Right? So very important, and I use that a lot when I'm talking with these companies, and I'm trying to develop relationships with them, and they love that because it's like, oh really? They can make a presentation? Your experiences, what makes you unique or distinctive, but as it relates to the organization and what they do, when you bring to the table. Can you figure out a way that you potentially could add value to the organization? What does that mean? And part of that might come from experience that you had. Something. I ran a small business all 4 years I was in college. It was my idea, I allowed to make this much money, so I'm very entrepreneurial, and I'm able to take an idea from start to finish and produce with it. That would be very unique. Most college graduates don't have that experience. So there's lots of different ways, and I think if you think about those experiences or you cultivate some experiences that are relatively unique as they relate to the occupation or organization, you have something, just that little added edge to communicate. Finally, we've just been talking about having a plan, okay, and working the plan. And we were just talking before I came in here. Is there some kind of checklist or something like that? Why, yes, there is. If you go to the Career Services website and you click on the student page, you click on strategies, and then there's a PDF that you can, and it's literally, it's a checklist. It lets you write down, it's got a thing on there, a section on there, you can write your goals. So if you need that, some people need that, some people don't. If you're looking for the task list, then that's helpful. Could be helpful for you. And I think the two things that I would say, and this is I think really important. You have to be proactive. We're in a job market right now. By the way, it's not nearly as dismal as when you go to Yahoo.com or whatever, or CNN.com, whatever you read, wherever you get your news from. Not nearly as dismal as for college graduates, at least for new college graduates, as it is for the general population. I don't want to minimize that we have 14 million people out of work, but hiring for new college graduates is running at least as good as it was last year, if not a little bit better. Salaries are up just a little bit, and there's no indication from the recruiters that they're going to stop. If Europe crashes tomorrow, all that could change. But right now, here's what is important. You got to be proactive. So don't wait. Get in the game. And this is one of the things. If you're a senior, you need to tell your friends. You got to get in the game. Some people, I think we've got some students right now who are standing on the sidelines because they think it's really bad out there. And the fact of the matter is if you're not in the game, it is bad. So get the process started, and progress will be made. So proactive, consistency. Be consistent in your plan. So I always say, the first job you have is to get a job. So treat it that way, and do that consistently. It doesn't. And I realize you got things that interrupt you. It's like I have to write a paper, or I have to do this. And you need to do all of that. You need to plan on that. And this is especially true for the seniors. But on the other hand, if you've got applications out there pending, or you're trying to develop relationships, networking relationships with people, and you start the process and then you leave them hanging for 2 weeks, they'll lose interest. So you have to be consistent. And the last thing is you have to be persistent. And that is, and again, this is part of the job market that we're in right now. You have to keep working at it, because if you don't keep working at it, then it will feel like you're never gonna reach your goal. I would also add one other thing: be flexible. Be flexible. Sometimes you say, I want to get from here to here. And what might end up happening is I might have to go from here to get here. Or I might have to take a right or a left turn to get, left or right, turn, and then get to my ultimate goal. It's not always a straight line from walking across the stage at graduation to being exactly where you are. Remember what I said, first destination. First destination, not final destination. What if your strategies fail? Have a plan B. Now, what are some alternatives that you could be doing? I talked to somebody not too long ago, and they were really struggling. They went and got a job they were waiting tables, which is a good thing. Because if you graduated and you're 3 months out and you haven't done anything, and they look at your resume and they go, what have they been doing for 3 months? They can understand 3 months, but after that, they start looking at it and go, what are they doing? So this person was smart. Started collecting business cards of people they waited on. And probably you've been there sitting at a table before, maybe with your parents or friends or something like that, and they talk to the wait staff and say, what are you doing? Are you a student? What do you want to do? And they were taking that as a networking opportunity. They got a job. So, there's ways to go through the back door. What are allied organizations to the ones that you want to do? How many of you know about Hoovers? Okay, if you go to the library website and you type in Hoovers, none of y'all are business majors like Hoovers is a business reporting system. They've been reporting on corporate America for, I don't know, 100 years. So you go in there and you can look up a company. You're going to look up Pfizer. One of the things that shows up on Pfizer, in addition to a lot of the information we were talking about earlier to gather, right, is competing organizations. What are Pfizer's biggest competitors? And it'll give you a list of them. And you go look them up. And then that gets you thinking about, you've got like your big top tier companies, and then you've got your Mission Pharma cows. You know about Mission? Mission's a local pharmaceutical company. It was started in San Antonio. It's still here. They're ethical pharmaceuticals, though, which means they have their own research and development and original products that they produce. Not a huge line, but they have them. Right? There's lots of small type companies out there. One of my favorite publications is a publication called Inc. INC. Right? The best companies you've never, there's something called the Inc. 5000. It's the best companies you've never heard of. And a lot of them are in industries or fields that you might be interested in doing some really neat things. Sometimes you get better opportunities with companies like that than you would with, if you go to work for a Procter & Gamble. Because guess what? Procter & Gamble has, you start off with this job, these are the things that you do, this is how we train you. You'll get some input in most of these companies now to be able to have some flexibility, but you won't be able to like float big ideas and make them happen like you could in smaller, more nimble organizations. So there are, those are the kinds of things that you want to do. You want to get more experience, whether it's volunteer or whatever, and you want to figure out how you can enhance your profile. Where do you get that information? A lot of times it's through networking contact. A lot of times it's through professors. You ask, say, what can I do to get better at? What do you see that I can improve on? And then how do I get there? Those are some of the kinds of things that you develop